What's that old saying? If at first you do not succeed, try again. And for today's exercise, that would translate to the number 47. You see, that is the horsepower increase from the 2020 Toyota Supra to the 2021 Toyota Supra. And what you are looking at there is a 3-liter inline-six that is turbocharged, that is better known as the BMW B58B 3001, not to be confused with the B58B 30C, which was the 335 horsepower version of this car. Now 382 horsepower, 368 pound-feet of torque. Granted, that's more torque, but it's only by 3 pound-feet. Then in a world gone all-wheel drive crazy, very happy to report this drives only the rear wheels through anything you want that is sadly an 8-speed torque converter automatic. Now, this is a BMW inline-six, and we've learned over the years, one of the best engine designs out there in the way it delivers power. And the story is very much told in performance figures. The 0 to 60, it's now down to 3.9 seconds from 4.1 seconds. And VMAX, that doesn't change because it was electronically limited before, as it is now, to 155 miles an hour. And yes, there's a flip side to more horsepower, a little bit less practicality, 22, 30, 25 mpg. But in reality, if one is focusing on a vehicle like this, MPG in a list of top 10 buying considerations would be 25. So now that we understand each other, our job today is to determine, is this a case of more is more, or is this a case of, I could have been a contender, I could have had class, I could have been someone. Full disclosure, it wasn't that the 2020 model year Supra was slow. It was one of those instances where you knew how much better it could be. And now better is a reality. With that. Oh, that is a good sound. That is really a good sound. Previously, it was just really quick, where now this is a bona fide fast car. The power delivery is significantly better, and we found that when we drove the Z4 version of this engine, it has more usable torque on a wider power band than the 335 horsepower version of this engine. And ultimately, that's just much better matched to the personality of what this car is trying to be. Now, if you really want to get pedantic, this is neither a Japanese car nor a German car. Technically, it's an Austrian car because that's where it's built alongside the BMW Z4, which means it shares the same suspension as well. McPherson struts in the front, 5-link in the rear. There are stabilizer bars front and rear, 23.5 millimeter diameter in the front, 18 millimeter diameter in the rear. 19-inch wheels all the way around. This car is a premium, which means it has the upgraded brakes. In the front, 4-piston Brembos with 13.7-inch diameter rotors, and in the rear, 1-piston calipers with 13.6-inch diameter rotors. Now, there are 2 other points of interest as it relates to the BMW. The wheelbase between the two, identical. The length is different. Now, I would look at the BMW, and being that it's a convertible, I would think that one's longer, when in reality, this one is 2 inches longer. In terms of curb weight, that translates to 3,400 pounds exactly. And if you look at what you and I have been driving a lot lately from Porsche 992s, that's kind of right in the ballpark. It's not heavy, it's not light, it's kind of like the Goldilocks of the sports car weight world, if there is such a thing. But anyway, we need to circle back to some of the changes that accompany the revised engine. The first is structure. The car already had a brace between the 2 struts in the rear. Now they've complemented that with the brace from the shock towers to the radiator on either side in the front. But far more interesting to me are the changes in the suspension setup. The engineers literally went into the computer and remapped 3 important systems. Number 1, the stability control. Number 2, the adjustable dampers. And I would argue the most important, the electric power steering. Yes, this is a good car to drive around corners. Yes, they say there is 50-50 weight distribution, but I would be hard-pressed to believe that because you almost feel as if you are sitting right on top of the rear axle. Kind of reminiscent of driving an old Cobra, and I would argue that's where there could be some improvement here, more control over the squat. Something we usually don't discuss. It's usually, hey, let's have more control over the pitch because side to side is much harder. One thing I did not complain about in my first drive of the Supra, the 2020 car, steering is pretty damn good. It's the kind of thing where you point and go. I don't know if it's the tuning of the suspension, but whatever it is, the benefit is absolutely in the steering, and it's almost perfect weighting. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game, Mind the Absence game, with today's contestant, something that's a bit of a global citizen. You see, this is assembled in Österreich by the folks at Magna, which is a Canadian company. It was engineered by BMW in Munich, which is a German company, and it was designed and tuned by the folks at Toyota, which is a Japanese company, and it is sold to us here in North America as a 2021 Toyota Supra, this one a premium, for a base price of $54,490. Would like to point out that the premium adds a number of things, 3 that stand out: the Brembo brakes, the JBL stereo, and most importantly, the head-up display. To that, there is only one factory option, a driver's assistance package, which is the radar cruise control, the blind spot warning, and the rear cross traffic alert, $1,195. Then this car has 2 port-installed options. One is a cargo mat. But what's unique about the cargo mat, it has a very cool Supra logo, and yes, I'm a little bit biased because I owned a Supra, but a bargain at 80 bucks. And then in today's day and age, I guess you need wheel locks, $65. Destination and handling, a bargain from Österreich, $955, for a total retail price of $56,785. Let's you and I go into the more basic mode and talk about a couple of notes. First and foremost, this thing, it's absolutely claustrophobic on the inside. 2 suggestions for improvement. Number 1, please offer another color aside from black. That is virtually the only color you can get. Yeah, there is that A91 model, which now has like a black with blue Alcantara, which is kind of cool with blue stitching, but it's still too dark. How about like a light gray, a tan, hell, even a red might work in here. And then second, and you guys know this about me, I am all about sunroofs, but here this car absolutely needs it. Yes, there's the cool design of the double bubble that takes after old Zagatos. I love that. Today's glass makers can render that in glass. And I'm not even saying open the sunroof. How about we just make it a glass roof, kind of like British cars finally caught on to. You can buy a new Continental GT or a Jaguar F-Type that has a glass roof in it. Even German cars that are trying to be British, like the AMG GT, they have a glass roof. While you and I are still on design, let's have a discussion about color and trim. Most of these things I've seen in the wild are black or red. The red is sort of good for this design, but I would argue it stands out much more in lighter colors. Specifically, yellow actually works in this car, especially when you compare it against the detailing of the wheels, where you really don't see it until you get right up on the car. The black wheel with a sort of satin chrome finish really stands out in the right color. So yes, this is a really long-winded way of me saying the color combination you're seeing in this episode, not the best one. And then of course there are the gauges. Not a fan of these bar graphs on either side for the fuel and the temperature gauges. I do like the center tachometer a la 911, but how about we just go with normal gauges? Let's get away from the TFT screens. It's a sports car. Let's go back to what's worked in sports cars for, what, 80 years now? And just do dials with legible needles and numbers. If we can do that, it'd be great. Thank you very much, or shall I say, vielen Dank und arigato gozaimasu. Okay, now that we understand all the changes I would make if I were the Grand Poobah, let's not mince words. This significantly better now with the proper engine. I would even go so far as to saying I appreciate the design more. You see, there are details in the design that reveal themselves to you only when you spend more time with the car. That said, I just cannot get past the money. And that's putting aside the elephant in the room that is the C8. 57 grand, one could have a Porsche Cayman for that same money. Now I totally appreciate that that Porsche Cayman will not have any of the equipment this car has. And yes, this car will absolutely mop the floor with the Cayman's ass in a straight line. But when it comes to driving dynamics, the Cayman, it is perfection. This is very good, but not perfection. And that is exactly where we have to put a pin in this conversation, because there's gonna be a part 2. You see, in about a month, we're gonna drive one of these that will be $14,000 cheaper. Yes, it will have a less powerful engine, but it's 14 grand cheaper and may change the equation. So until then, I'm gonna turn this conversation around to you guys and say, if you had $57,000 you had to spend on a new car, would it be this or would it be something else? And if it were something else, what would that something else be and why? Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, until I see you in the next episode, bis später. That's the gull wing stranded on the side of the road. You see that? And the owner's actually doing the work on the side of the road. He doesn't call somebody to fix it, he does the work himself.